I was measuring out my morning pills when the phone lit up with Chloe's name. I almost let it ring out. Then I thought, be generous, Evelyn. Answer while the kettle hums. Her voice had that upbeat shine she puts on when she's about to sell something. We're heading to Seattle tomorrow, she said, like she was reading a weather report. Nate and I found a place that fits our future. Oh, and we already handled the river lot and the little cabin. It'll all make sense when you see the numbers. For a heartbeat, I heard only the kettle and the gulls. Handled, I repeated, as if trying on a coat I knew wouldn't fit. She kept talking, words like leverage and timing and market window skittering across the linoleum of my brain. I pictured the cabin the way it always appears in my mind. Wet cedar, chipped blue porch swing, Elliot's initials carved under the rail 50 years younger than now. My fingers found the brass lighthouse key resting on its hook by the back door. The metal was cool. It steadied me the way a hand on your shoulder does. I said something polite because that's what I do when I don't want to cry. She mistook it for agreement. We'll text later, she chirped, and the call ended with that bright little chime that never sounds kind. I set the phone down beside the pill sorter and listened to the kettle click itself off. Before I moved, I let the quiet spread out. Then I turned the key in my palm and felt its teeth. Here's the part Chloe never bothered to learn. My late husband, Elliot, did not build that cabin with guesswork and good weather. He built it with lists. He labeled coffee cans with screws sorted by length and wrote dates on the backs of photographs. When he got sick, he got thorough. After the funeral, I tucked the red binder he left me, Elliott Family Trust, into the bottom drawer with the wool blankets. People brought casseroles. I brought order to closets. That's the way grief moved through me. Not in sobs, but in systems. I took the binder out now, the way you unearth winter clothes at the first cold snap. The page marked River Parcel was still clipped where I'd left it. Grantor, trustee, successor trustee. Easements, life estate. My name in print so sharp it might have been carved. Somewhere between the legalese and the smell of Elliot's aftershave woven into the paper fibers, my heartbeat returned to normal. I wish I could tell you I felt nothing but strength. Truth is, a softer feeling arrived first. It was relief's quieter cousin, the kind that says, "You're not crazy. The ground is still under you." Then a second feeling followed, older and sturdier. A promise I'd made to myself the week he died, when the world first tried to press me into signing and smiling. No daylight, no signature. If we can't do this in the light, with paper and names and time to read, then we don't do it at all. I poured tea. The steam smelled like lemons because Ruth insists I buy the good kind. She knocks on my back door like she has a key, and in a way she does. She's the one who told me a long time ago that love without edges is just a puddle. Put a shore to it, she said, or people will drive boats through your kitchen. I laughed then. I didn't laugh now. I just set the cup on a coaster and watched the ripples settle. Nate didn't call. That hurt in a smaller, meaner way than I'm proud to admit. My son used to bring me rusty beach glass like treasure. Now he lets his wife do the talking because her sentences arrive with charts attached. I don't hate Chloe. I hate the way she makes him smaller. I turned the lighthouse key once in my hand just to hear the faint click against my wedding band. Then I put the binder on the kitchen table, laid out pens, and opened my little spiral notebook where I write dates and names and who said what. If there's one thing I learned by 30 years in ICU, it's this. When people panic, paperwork saves lives. They think they sold something that was never theirs to sell. 3 months before that phone call, Chloe showed up with grocery store roses and a tote bag that rattled like cutlery. She kissed the air beside my cheek and said, "I brought the paperwork to make life easier, Mom." That last word still felt new in her mouth, warm and performative at the same time. She spread the stack on my kitchen table the way a magician fans cards. Release forms, utilities, aftercare authorizations, and one thick packet with the friendliest cover I've ever seen. A watercolor sailboat, a sunrise, the title in soft blue, Household Assistance for Surviving Spouses. "You've been through so much," she cooed. "All this does is let us help. We'll manage bills, handle DMV, insurance, you won't have to lift a finger." The packet smelled faintly of perfume and fresh toner. I ran my finger down a paragraph about streamlined signature authority and temporary authorization to transact. Chloe tapped the line with a pink nail. It's standard. My team uses it with clients who are grieving. One signature and we can stop anything slipping through the cracks. I stared at the line where my name waited. I could hear Elliot in my head, the way he would clear his throat when he didn't want to be bossy. Read it out loud, Evie. Paper sounds different when you give it a voice. I didn't read it out loud. I heard the refrigerator hum, the clock on the wall tick like a soft metronome. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice in the exact same tone it always uses, as if on cue. Ruth knocked once and let herself in, shaking rain off her jacket like a cat. She took in the scene, roses, papers, Chloe's smile, and narrowed her eyes at the watercolor boat. "Pretty cover for something that needs ugly light," she said, tugging the kitchen blind higher so the gray day came pouring in. To Chloe, she added, in that kindly postal worker voice that can still stop a dog at full bark, "We sign important things at high noon, with names spelled right and dates we can see." And it was matter. Chloe laughed like Ruth had told a quaint joke. "Of course. We're just organizing. We can come back tomorrow to notarize if that's more comfortable." Ruth pulled her glasses down her nose and skimmed the top page. She tapped a box labeled Agent's Powers. "This here lets you move money, sell trucks, sign on property broad as the river in spring flood, and there's no end date typed in, until revoked in writing." She looked at me. "Honey, if you want help, we'll help, but nobody needs a blank check to love you." I felt heat crawl up my neck because part of me wanted exactly what Chloe was selling, a life without forms, a quiet kitchen with no envelopes to dread. "Grief makes you long for someone to tell you where to sign so you can climb back into bed." I said as much, softly. Chloe leaned in, softening her voice. "Exactly. We'll bridge you through. Think of it like training wheels." I nodded as if that made sense. Then I opened the drawer under the microwave and took out Elliot's red binder. He'd labeled the spine with masking tape in block letters, "Elliot Family Trust." The brass lighthouse key hung on its hook beside the door. I let it rest against the binder so the metal gave a small, bright tap. "Before I sign anything," I said, "I need to understand what I already have." We sat. I told Chloe about the Svensson cabin, the cedar Elliot and his brothers dragged up the hill, piece by piece, the way he lined the pantry with old cigar boxes filled with screws sorted by size, the porch he rebuilt with salvaged planks after that storm in '98. I told her about the old F-150 Elliot, kept like a pet, how he'd change the oil on a towel laid over the driveway so the concrete wouldn't stain. The truck keys hang on the same hook as the lighthouse key. Chloe smiled like a realtor hearing features she can list. "The truck is a depreciating asset, Mom. Let us liquidate the hassle. Focus on healing." Ruth rolled one shoulder, a move she uses when she's about to lift a heavy story. "Evelyn used to triage 3 monitors at a time in ICU. She can handle a utility bill," she said. Then to me, gentler, "You can ask for help without surrendering your name. They're different verbs." Chloe packed the packet back into her tote with a flourish. "No pressure," she said. "We'll bring a notary by tomorrow, noon, just like you like." She kissed the air again and left a cloud of floral promise behind. After the door clicked, Ruth and I stood in the kitchen breathing the ordinary smell of lemon soap and rain. She touched the binder. "Leave it out. Make the table a bright place. Grief hates light." When she was gone, I sat with the papers and read every paragraph until the words stopped swimming. I wrote in my spiral notebook, "Today, Chloe packet. Scope, broad powers, no sunset." I didn't sleep well that night. I dreamed I was trying to lock a door with the wrong key while a tide rose around my ankles. In the morning I made coffee, set the red binder in the center of the table, and laid the lighthouse key on top like a paperweight. When noon came, I had my ID, my notes, and a pen that writes clean. I smiled when Chloe walked in with her notary and her perfume and her sunrise sailboat. I had signed, but on my own, black and white. The bank called just after lunch, the hour when the house goes quiet and even the refrigerator seems to nap. "Mrs. Hart, this is Denise from Columbia River Credit Union. Do you have a minute to verify an outgoing transfer?" Her tone was friendly but carried that thin wire of urgency-trained voices can't hide. I moved the brass lighthouse key from its hook to the table and set the phone beside it like they were taking each other's pulse. "Go ahead," I said. There's a $18,400 wire queued to Ridgeview Holdings. Memo expedite lien release. Authorized via power of attorney on file. We're calling because the pattern is new. Power of attorney. Such confident words for something that had never seen daylight in my kitchen. I felt the old nurse in me stand up back straight, breath slow, count the beeps. In ICU, we had a saying we half-joked into a rule. Calm, collect, confirm. You do those three, you get your patient back. You skip one, you chase your tail. So I took a breath. Calm. Then I asked for what I needed. Denise, can you read me the exact title of the document you're relying on and the date you received it? Paper rustled. It's labeled Household Assistance for Surviving Spouses Limited, POA, received 3 months ago. Agent, Chloe Martin. No expiration stated. Collect. And what's the callback number on file for me, not the one that called in? I'll hang up and call you back. I don't approve anything over an inbound call. She sounded relieved. Absolutely. It's 503 to 555. I wrote it in my spiral notebook, underlined it, and hung up. Then I dialed the number she'd given me and asked for Denise again. When she returned, I could hear her smile through the line. Thank you for doing that, Mrs. Hart. Thank you for understanding, I said. Here's my confirmation. I do not authorize the transfer. Please freeze outbound wires on all accounts until I set a verbal password. Speeding. Other. We can do that right now. I deadmin. We chose a word Elliot would have loved, something about boats and stubborn weather, and Denise read back the letters one by one. She also added a note. In person only for any changes. Verify with branch manager Maya Chen. I liked the firmness of that. It felt like locking a door you'd somehow left open. While I have you, I said, please email me a copy of the POA you have on file and the address it came from. There was a pause, not resistance exactly, more like a checkpoint. I can send a certified copy, she said. And the envelope was hand-delivered by Miss Martin with a business card attached. I thanked Denise and made a second call, this time to the non-emergency police line. Not a crime to report, I told the dispatcher, but a question about how to keep things civil if family shows up to discuss paperwork. She patched me to Officer Park, whose voice had the clean edges of someone who irons their shirts and their thoughts. I explained, briefly. Widow, disputed authority, a property everyone suddenly cares about. 2 things, Officer Park said. 1. If you anticipate conflict, you can request a civil standby while you exchange keys or documents. We're present so nobody escalates. 2. Start contemporaneous notes now. Dates, times, who said what. It sounds boring until it saves you. I've already got the notebook, I said. And the key. I didn't explain what key. She didn't ask. Good, she said. When people get scared, they try to hurry. Your job is to slow it down until it's true. After we hung up, I made tea and opened the red binder, thumbing to the tab Elliot had labeled River Parcel Trust. The language was dry in the way desert air is dry, harsh enough to preserve. Grantor, trustee, successor trustee. No authority to convey without trustee consent. Elliot had underlined that twice. I traced his pen marks like a road I knew by feel. My inbox pinged with the certified copy from the bank. The document Chloe had carried in on perfume and smiles looked exactly like Ruth said it would. Broad as the Columbia in flood season, no sunset clause, signatures glossy with urgency. I filed it in a plastic sleeve and wrote across the top in blue ink, presented without daylight. I called Denise back and set the verbal password on every account, then asked her to add a note that I preferred in-branch verification with manager oversight. We've got you, she said. I believed her, not because banks are saints, but because procedures are surprisingly tender when you need them. When the house was quiet again, I sat with my notebook and logged the day. Times, names, amounts, what was said, what was stopped. The lighthouse key rested on the margin, leaving a small crescent dent in the paper where my hand kept touching it. If you'd walked in just then, you might have thought I was only a woman making lists to keep from crying. You wouldn't have been wrong, but you also would have missed the part where a small door inside me clicked shut. They can try to move money that isn't theirs. They can swing paperwork like a net. What they don't know in this merciful, almost funny moment is that the cabin they're circling lives inside Elliot's trust, and trust doesn't scare easily. Chloe arrived with iced coffees and the kind of smile people use when they've already decided how the conversation ends. She set a cup down in front of me and patted my hand like I was a patient who'd wandered off. "We're worried about you," she began, voice wrapped in bubble wrap. "After Elliot passed, you've been overwhelmed. It's totally normal to mix up details." "I'm not mixed up," I said, but she was already nodding like we'd agreed. "It's just when you called the bank, you created a lot of friction. Vendors get spooked. Timelines slide. This is why we tried to shoulder things." She opened a folder and slid a color printout across the table, a timeline she'd made of helpful tasks, each one highlighted like a gold star. "We have to keep momentum or we'll lose our buyer for the river lot." "We don't have a buyer," I said. "You have a story." Chloe tilted her head, sympathy painted on, eyebrows slanted into concern. "Evelyn, you signed a limited POA. You wanted us to handle the heavy lifting, remember?" I explained everything. Ruth was even here. It's okay that you don't recall every detail. Ruth had the timing of a postman and a comedian. She knocked once and let herself in, rain crackling on her jacket. "Heard my name," she said, eyes going straight to Chloe's folder like a magnet finds north. She pulled her little carrier bag onto the chair and took out a narrow notebook bound with a rubber band. "I brought you something." "To me," she said. "I know you don't throw mail away, but this is the kind people try to keep off the record." She flipped to a page where she'd taped a barcode slip and a photocopy of a signature capture. "Certified piece dropped at your porch last week. Return address, Ridgeview Holdings LLC. It wasn't in the USPS system as addressed to you. It was addressed to Trusty Heart Property Solutions, care of this address." She tapped the photocopy. "No such entity at your house. Your porch is not a registered office, last I checked." Chloe put sugar packets in a neat little stack and smiled. "Ridgeview is the holding company we're partnering with. Totally standard. They move high-value deals quickly. We're trying to keep Mom from getting exploited by predatory buyers." Ruth sniffed. "Funny word for a partner. Exploited." She slid another page forward. "Also funny. The signature the driver captured isn't Evelyn's. It's E. Hart, in a hand that writes the E like a backwards 3. Chloe's smile didn't budge. "I signed for her. With permission." "Weld?" "You did not," I said, and felt the lighthouse key under my palm, the cool of it press a small half-moon into my skin, as if to steady me. Chloe went gentler, the way people soften right before they press hard. "Look, I don't want this to turn into a thing. Nate's under a lot of pressure. We all are. If we miss our financing window, everybody loses. Just let us clear the plate, okay? Then we'll reset." "Nate's under pressure?" I asked. "From whom?" "From life," she said lightly. "From the economy. From the fact that you can't maintain 2 properties on a nurse's pension. I'm trying to keep this family afloat." She said family the way salespeople say limited time. Ruth cocked her head. "Which family? Yours? Or the one whose cabin you're circling?" She reached back into her bag and produced a thin manila envelope. "Also, this came through our system 2 days before your helpful visit. Sender? Ridgeview. Recipient? Chloe Martin. Content? Deal package assign and record. You signed for that at your own address." Chloe's smile finally blinked. "Ridgeview sends templates. I review them to protect Mom." "Then you won't mind if our attorney takes a look," I said. She leaned back, palms open. "Attorney? Evelyn, that's extreme. We're family. I'm not the enemy." She reached toward my tea and rotated the mug so the handle faced me, like I needed help finding it. "You're grieving. You're misremembering. We're the only ones doing the work. Nate is exhausted. He can't carry this alone." I heard the word alone, like a small click inside my chest. My son, shoulders stooped under someone else's plan. "Where is he?" I asked. "At a meeting," she said. "Important investor." Ruth made a small humming sound that meant she'd put a pin in that for later. I pulled my spiral notebook closer and wrote the words Ridgeview Holdings in a tidy line, then circled them twice. The lighthouse key kept time against the paper as I tapped it slow, steady, the metronome of my patience. Chloe slid another sheet across, a photocopy of my signature clipped to a different form than I'd ever seen. "See, your name. Your consent." I looked at it and felt a thin, cold breeze move through my ribs. I know my own hand. I also know when it's been cut out and pasted into a shape it never made. "My signature," I said, keeping my voice level, "has been glued onto a different document." Jack O'Leary's office smelled like old books and rain-soaked wool. He's the kind of lawyer who keeps a stapler from 1998 and a candy jar he forgets to refill. He read in silence for a long minute, flipping through copies I'd brought, the red binder, the limited POA, the bank printouts, Ruth's postal slips. When he finally looked up, his face had that calm I've only ever seen on anesthesiologists and ferry captains. "Good news first," he said. "The river cabin sits inside the Elliott Family Trust. You're the current trustee and beneficiary. Your late husband also wrote in a life estate for you plain language. You have the right to use and enjoy the property during your lifetime. No one can sell or encumber it without trustee consent, which you did not give." He tapped a clause Elliott had underlined twice. "Any attempted sale or assignment without the trustee's signature is void on its face." The words landed the way a dock catches a boat. My shoulders dropped an inch. I hadn't noticed they were holding. "So all that Ridgeview drama—" "Noise," he said. "The trust is a locked door. If they tried to record anything, we can set it aside." He paused. "That said, this paper," he held up Chloe's friendly blue packet, "is broad. It's sloppy, but it exists. Banks sometimes act on documents like this if no one squawks." "You squawked. That saved you." I turned the brass lighthouse key in my palm and heard the tiny click against my wedding band, the sound I'd started using as a pulse check. "What about the truck?" He winced, just a shadow across the eyes. "Different story. The F-150's title wasn't inside the trust. That POA gave enough appearance of authority for a quick private sale. We can challenge it as obtained by deception, but that's a fight that eats time and money. Better path, if the buyer is decent, buy it back for what they paid plus a little goodwill." I let out a breath through my nose. "So we don't swing at every pitch. We pick our pitches," he said, "and we control the count." He slid a yellow pad toward me. "Here's what I recommend. Not legal advice, just a plan. 1. File a trustee's affidavit that confirms your role and the trust's ownership. So county records and banks have a bright, current sheet on top of the file. 2. Place written revocations wherever that POA might be floating. Bank, DMV, insurance. 3. Narrow access, in-person only, daylight hours, branch manager present. 4. If you want to go quiet, avoid open accusations for now. Paper closes doors without shouting. The nurse in me loves a checklist. And for Ridgeview, we shine light. If they recorded anything, we send notice. If they didn't, we document that they tried and failed. Either way, your position strengthens while theirs evaporates." He smiled a little. "Predators hate paperwork." I thought of Chloe's crisp timeline, of Nate's silence, of my own temptation to swing big just to stop the ache. What if my kid takes it as war? The great for great from Ladded. Jack folded his hands. "Stewardship isn't war. It's care with edges. You're not punishing. You're protecting a roof and a future. People who call that cruelty are usually standing under your eaves without paying rent." I laughed, a small, grateful sound I hadn't made in weeks. "Okay, we do the quiet version." He called a friend who knew a guy who'd bought a cherry old Ford from a nice young couple in a hurry. By dinner, we had a number and a meeting time in a grocery store parking lot. I took cash from the credit union. Denise wished me luck like I was going to a bake sale, and Ruth rode shotgun, knitting needles clicking like good luck crickets. The buyer was a fisherman who looked sorry before I said a word. "I don't want trouble," he said. "I just needed a truck that would start in November." "You're not in trouble," I told him. "You're the only reasonable adult in this story." We shook hands. Money for keys, plus an extra envelope for the inconvenience. He blushed and promised to wave if he saw us on Highway 30. When I pressed the fob, the F-150 answered with that soft, homely beep that sounds like a dog remembering its name. Back home, I set the lighthouse key and the truck keys side by side on the table and opened the red binder to the first page. I wrote today's date in clean blue ink and added a new tab, Control Measures. Then I drafted a short statement in my own words. I am the trustee. I revoke any authority not signed in daylight, in person only. Manager present. Call back to the number on file. It felt less like fighting and more like sweeping a floor I meant to keep. Not dramatic, not triumphal, just correct. I wish I could tell you anger drove me. It didn't. What moved me was something steadier, the sense that Elliot had built a room I could live in, and my job now was to keep the windows open and the locks working. Nate could still knock on that door. I wanted him to, but through a handle, not a loophole. I'll teach my son differently this time, quietly, with process. By Friday morning, Chloe had shifted into fast forward. Her texts landed in bursts, screenshots of urgent lender emails, bolded words like default, deadline, foreclosure. Then a new one. A forwarded message from a Ridgeview address I hadn't seen before, copied to a man with Chloe's last name. Push this through by close of business. Get signatures. Don't leave paper lying around. The tone wasn't family. It was a stopwatch. She called before I could answer the text. Evelyn, I need you to be flexible. Nate's in a bind, short-term cash crunch, nothing dramatic, but if we don't hit this window, the bank will come after the secondary dwelling. It's basically foreclosure. Please don't make this harder. The secondary dwelling? I asked. You mean the ADU in my backyard where you two have been staying? A beat of silence. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying optics matter. If you stall, we all look unstable to lenders. I told you, I'm protecting the family. There it was again, that word she wears like a badge while she unthreads the seams. I thanked her for the update and ended the call because I don't negotiate when my hands are shaking. I set the phone face down and brought both sets of keys, the brass lighthouse and the truck fob, into my palm. The fob chirped when I brushed the button, a small domestic sound that steadied the room. Ruth came by with cinnamon rolls and her postal bag. She listened while I read the Ridgeview email out loud. Daddy's on the thread, she said softly, tapping the surname. That tracks. She tore a napkin in half, the way she does when she's thinking. You want my advice you didn't ask for? I do. Don't meet a stopwatch with a sprint. Meet it with a calendar. She slid my spiral notebook closer. Start writing dates the law understands, notice dates, response windows, the day you told the truth. So I did. Then I called Jack. He didn't bother pretending this was new. You've been clear and civil, he said. Now be clear on paper. Draft a notice regarding the ADU, expectations, timeline, where mail goes, when keys are due. Keep it boring. Boring survives a judge. We picked language that was plain as a fence line and dated it properly. Not punitive, just true. Before I left for the post office, I sat at the kitchen table and did the other thing that keeps me from making fear-shaped decisions. I opened my little before I sign card, the one I made after Elliot's second stroke, when people kept putting pens in my hand. This isn't advice. It's just what I ask myself so I can sleep. Do I know the sender without squinting? Is the title the same on every page? Who benefits if I rush? Where does this end if nothing changes? What happens in daylight with a witness? What's the exit if I'm wrong? Would Elliot tell me to read it out loud? If I can't answer those, I don't sign. I pour tea and wait for the sun to move. At the branch, Maya read my notice the way a careful person reads a recipe, twice. It's clear, she said. And you're dropping it certified? I nodded. Good. If they try to argue about who knew what, you'll have a timestamp that doesn't lie. On the way home, I swung by the blue box and felt the weight leave my fingers. The receipt went straight into the envelope I keep for this season of my life. Control Measures, tabbed in bright red like a stop sign. I dated my notebook, logged the tracking number, and added one simple line. Spoke to Chloe. Fear tactics noted. Responded with calendar, not speed. That afternoon, like thunder looking for a place to land, Chloe parked at the curb and came up the walk with her arms full of binders and urgency. I've drafted a revised agreement, she said before hello. Cleaner, tighter, less confusing than the other one. We can get a notary over in an hour." "No," I said, not loud but not soft. "We're done signing things on surprise clocks." She blinked. "It's not a surprise, it's finance. If we don't close, the ADU becomes a liability. Nate can come talk to me," I said. "My door is open to my son." For a second, her face changed, like a mask sliding and snagging on the nose. She laid the binder down, flipped to a signature page already flagged with a cheerful sticker. "Just preliminaries," she said, tapping where my name waited. "It's standard." The lighthouse key was warm from my hand. The truck fob, still resting against it, gave a single soft beep as my thumb grazed the plastic. It sounded like a yes to myself. "I'm sure it is," I said. "And I will not be signing it." Her mouth tightened. "You're putting everyone at risk over pride." "I'm putting dates on paper," I said. "That's called grown-up. And here's the tantics." She gathered her things with small, efficient motions, the kind that say, "I will win later." As she reached the door, she turned back, switching to sugar. "You don't have to make this ugly, Evelyn. We can be partners." "We can," I said, "when partnership isn't a synonym for pressure." After she left, the house felt like it had been holding its breath and finally exhaled. I wrote one more line in my notebook, the kind of sentence that keeps my spine in the right shape when the room gets loud. "The day they get the paper is the day they meet the real mom." It rained the way it does in this town when the sky remembers it's an ocean steady, tireless, patient, as someone who refuses to hang up first. I couldn't sleep. The house made its night sounds. The tick of the kitchen clock, the soft settling of wood, the distant horn from a barge that always makes me think of Elliot lifting 2 fingers from the steering wheel to wave at strangers. I set a cup under the kettle anyway. Not for the tea, but for the comfort of doing something that ends with steam. Grief is strange. People think it lives in the past, but some nights I feel it sitting in the chair across from me, elbows on its knees, waiting to see what I'll do next. I turned the brass lighthouse key in my palm until the metal warmed. The little teeth left half-moons in my skin I could still see when I opened my hand. I used to think love meant smoothing everything over. If I was gentle enough, the world would be gentle back. I married a gentle man, and for a long time that theory held. Then he died, and the world sent me packets that smelled like perfume but read like crowbars. Ruth says the truest sentences in the smallest words. She told me once, in the car after a funeral, kids forgive a no sooner than they forgive a lie. It irritated me at the time, because I was raising a son who could talk me into pancakes at midnight and new shoes on a Tuesday. I wanted the easy house, the soft landing. Now my son is a man who doesn't call when a storm is forming because the person next to him has a louder forecast, and I have to admit, the easy house was mostly on credit. I sat with that a while. The kettle clicked off and the gas shut with a sound like a door catching. I poured the water, watched the tea bag darken the cup, and made myself name the thing I've been circling. I have been practicing a faith with no commandments. Be kind, I'd tell myself. Be generous. Give people the benefit of the doubt until your doubt has no benefits left. Meanwhile, my doubt has been paying everyone else's bills. Rain came harder, then softer, then hard again, like it was trying to tune me. I went to the hallway and turned on the small lamp I keep on the console table, the one that doesn't throw a scene, just makes a circle big enough for hands and paper. I brought my spiral notebook, the red binder, a roll of tape, a black marker with a tip that makes letters look like they belong to someone who knows what they're doing. I tore a sheet from the back, smoothed it with my palm, and wrote the sentence I'd been carrying in my mouth like a stone. No daylight, no signature. I said it out loud to hear if it rang or clanked. It rang. It sounded exactly like what it is. Not a threat, not a dare, just a rule that could outlast a storm. I taped it to the mirror in the hallway where I check if my grief is showing before I go out. The paper looked almost shy up there, like a new note on the fridge the family isn't sure applies to them yet. That's fine. Notes teach by staying. I thought about Nate, the boy who used to bounce in the passenger seat and ask if we could drive past the boats again, the teenager who slammed doors with the full-body commitment only teenagers possess, the man who stands on my back steps now with his hands in his jacket and his eyes on the gravel saying, "Chloe's got a plan, Mom," like he's loaned out his own. I love him all the way back to the beginning. I can love him and still lock the door he doesn't know he's trying to walk through. The key rested on the console, catching the lamplight. I set the truck fob beside it. Together they made a small domestic altar to stewardship, the door to the past, the vehicle for the present. Edges, I said to the empty room, and the word felt less like a wall and more like a shoreline. Ruth knocked once, because of course she would. It was near midnight, but she knows my lamps. She handed me a small Tupperware of soup and didn't ask why I was awake. She glanced at the paper on the mirror, read it, and nodded like she'd been waiting for that sentence to show up for months. Put another copy where you make phone calls, she said. People get slippery around telephones. Do you think I'm being cruel? I asked, because I needed someone who didn't love me by blood to answer. She took her time. Cruel is what happens when people look at your soft heart and see a spare wallet. This is a lock. Locks don't accuse, they protect. After she left, the house felt honest. Rain eased to a hush. I wrote one more line in the notebook, the kind you write for your future self when you know she'll be tired and tempted. Saying no is a way of saying yes to the room you're supposed to keep safe. I turned off the lamp and stood in the doorway long enough to hear the clock again. I could feel the shape of tomorrow without flinching. Morning would come, paper would go out, and when the phone rang with urgency dressed as care, I would look up at the mirror and remember, if it isn't in the light, it isn't mine to sign. I chose noon on purpose, sun high, counters busy, the kind of day when even a bad idea looks smaller. I walked into the branch with my spiral notebook, the red binder, and the brass lighthouse key in my pocket where I could touch it without making a scene. Denise waved from a desk. Maya met me near the offices with that steady warmth that tells you someone reads emails all the way to the end. "We'll sit here," she said, guiding me to a small table by the window. "Manager presence, like you asked." Chloe arrived first, heels quick, smile quicker, carrying a fresh binder with tabs that color coordinated like a mood board. "I cleaned it all up so it's less confusing," she said, placing it between us as if we were both on her side of the table. Then Nate came in, eyes tired, hat in his hands in a way that made him look suddenly 12. He didn't take a seat right away. Hovered like he might need permission to be in this room. "Thanks for coming," I said. "I want everything in daylight." Officer Park appeared a minute later, uniform calm but present, like a period at the end of a sentence that needed one. She nodded to Maya, stood near the door, and folded her hands. No drama, just the quiet knowledge that escalation would have company. I opened my notebook. "We're going to be very boring," I said, mostly to myself. "Boring survives." Then I read what I'd prepared, the way I would read off medications at change of shift. Family incident, log date, time, place, who is present, purpose, clarify authority and next steps. This is not legal advice. Maya smiled like someone hearing their favorite lullaby. "Go ahead," she said. I listed the essentials. I'd promised myself I would never skip again. 1. Who requested the meeting? 2. What documents are on the table by exact title and date? What authority is being claimed, and by whom? What account or property each request touches? 5. What prior consents, if any, exist in writing? 6. What revocations have been delivered and when? What verification method we are using today? Where copies will be sent? 9. When decisions will be made no on the spot signatures? 10. Which callback number is the only number we use? Chloe laughed softly. "Evelyn, you're making this bigger than it is." "No," I said. "I'm making it visible." Maya pulled the bank's copy of the limited POA and placed it next to Chloe's new binder, corners aligned like a lab comparison. "For the record," she said, "this document has no expiration, is broad, and was delivered 3 months ago, permissus. Hart's instruction, outbound wires are frozen, in-person verification is required, and a verbal password is active." She turned to me. "You can say yes to specific items one by one, or no. We won't move without it." Chloe slid the new signature page forward, sticker flag bright as a lure. "This one narrows things. It just lets us reposition assets, so Mom isn't crushed by maintenance. We're protecting her." Officer Park cleared her throat the tiniest bit, the way a violinist settles a string. "Reminder, you're free to discuss. No one is required to sign anything today. Nate put his hat down. His voice surprised me lower, rougher. Chloe, maybe we should slow. She didn't look at him. We can't, Nate. The ADU risk. The ADU is mine to manage, I said. I mailed notice yesterday certified. Dates are on the calendar, not on your stopwatch. Chloe's mouth pressed thin. So you're really doing this, after everything we've done to help? You've done many things, I said. Some were help, some were pressure. Today is clarity. Maya flipped to a bank form and spoke to the table, not to any one person. Given the trust language and the revocations on file, the bank won't act on any POA for titled property without the trustee's in-person consent. That means Mrs. Hart's consent. Today, she has not given it. Something released in my chest I didn't know I was bracing. The key in my pocket warmed under my hand like a good animal. Nate finally looked at me straight on. Mom, he said, and the word felt real again. I didn't know about some of this. I should have asked you before. All of it. I'm right here, I said. Asking works. Chloe gathered her papers with tidy, practiced hands. This is a mistake you'll regret, she said, turning the sentence into a blessing that didn't bless. Maybe, I said, but it'll be my mistake. Signed in daylight. Officer Park stepped aside. Maya slid a printed receipt across the table, today's log, stamped with the time. We'll email the notes, she said. Callback goes to the number on file. Nothing moves unless you say so. Outside, the sun happened to break through like it had been waiting for this exact moment to practice being obvious. I put the receipt into the red binder and felt the weight settle in a way that didn't feel heavy. On the way out, Nate touched my sleeve. There's something you should see, he said quietly. About Ridgeview. Nate didn't take me to a parking lot or a bar. He took me to the public library. That's how I knew he was telling the truth before he said a word. He guided me to a back table under a bulletin board with lost cats and bake sales and opened his laptop like a confession. I shouldn't have kept this from you, he said. I thought I could fix it without exposing everything. Have settled. On the screen was an email thread he'd forwarded to himself from Chloe's computer months ago, back when he still believed in fixing things with midnight heroics. The subject line was bland. Pipeline Q 3 targets. The names were not. Ridgeview's project manager, a junior analyst, and a CC to Harlan Martin, Chloe's father. I read the messages the way you read a lab result when you already know what it's going to say. Bullet points with numbers, closings like keep pressure on, secure signatures, pull POA language from template. One note from Harlan stood still in the middle of the page like a snake in grass. She's a soft touch. Frame it as elder protection. Get the asset out of trust or control. Use through her agents. KPI is signatures, not goodwill. Chloe didn't write that, Nate said, as if he needed to choose who to protect first. Her dad runs the shop. She does the social front end. Another file. A spreadsheet called Q3 bonus ladder with the columns. Assignments closed, new POAs acquired, family resistance overcome. Next to Chloe's name, someone had typed a number and the word stretch. I held my breath through 2 blinks. So she wasn't only helping the family, I said. She was helping the quarter. Nate stared at his hands. They kept saying it was for your safety. And he swallowed, jaw working. I didn't tell you about the rest because I was ashamed. The rest, I repeated. He clicked another tab. Bank statements, cash advances, a credit line with late fees stacked like plates, then a spreadsheet he'd made himself, neat columns, a little too hopeful. At the bottom, total owed, a number that could hollow out a man. Small bets, he said, barely above a whisper. Then not small anymore. I thought one good run would wipe it out. They always say that, right? One good run. I didn't reach for him. I didn't scold. I kept my voice in the shape of a chair someone could sit in. Thank you for showing me. I gave Chloe permission to handle things because I wanted air, he said. I thought if she moved fast, the noise would die down. He looked up. I made you the noise. There are moments you can feel your heart choose a road. I heard Elliot's sentence, the one he'd use when the dog got out, and a neighbor called, "We can be sorry and still shut the gate." I nodded once. Okay, I said. We shut the gates. Back home, I pulled out the red binder and my notebook, and wrote a statement so simple it almost embarrassed me. Stewardship, not rescue. Then I did 3 things in the same mood other people make soup. First, I printed a formal no trespass notice for the ADU, clear dates, clear boundaries, delivered the civil way. Officer Park watched me post a copy by the back gate and told me it looked refreshingly boring. I sent the certified version too. Not a drama, a document. Second, I issued revocations where revocations needed to live. At the bank, the insurance, the DMV. I added to each, in person only, manager present, callback to number on file. Maya stamped them and handed me a receipt. Paper is gravity, she said. Use it. Third, I changed the things ordinary people forget you can change. Door codes, Wi-Fi, the old lock on the ADU that Elliot kept meaning to replace. The brass lighthouse key turned backward in the new deadbolt with a satisfying thunk, like a period drawn with a fountain pen. At dusk, the ADU's porch light clicked on by timer. I walked across the small yard with the notice copies in a plastic sleeve and slid one under the door. Then I reached up and flicked the switch inside the service panel. The porch light went black. Not a threat. A reset. Chloe texted 3 times that night, messages with long words about retaliatory action and misunderstandings we could clear if you were less rigid. I wrote back 1 sentence, all future communication by email, in person only for keys and mail, with a witness. She sent a laughing emoji, then a line that would have gutted me last month. You'll regret this. I set the phone face down and looked at the mirror where my paper hung. No daylight, no signature. It glowed in the hall like a small lighthouse. Later, alone in the kitchen, I opened a slim envelope I hadn't noticed at the back of the binder. Elliot's handwriting on the front in his square, patient print, letter of wishes. The first pages were familiar things he hoped for me, the way he wanted his tools given out to nephews who'd actually use them. The last page had a crease it hadn't had before, like it had waited for my hands to be strong enough. I slid my finger under the fold and felt the paper loosen. There is one more key in this story, the one they don't expect. The last page of Elliot's letter was simple, the way a lighthouse is simple. A shape that only does one job and does it for 100 years. If you outlive me, Evie, keep the cabin until your bones don't want stairs. After that, it belongs where it can keep other people warm. I've spoken with the Columbia Shore Community Land Trust. There's a spot for it there. Stewardship, not storage. If our boy wants a place to stand, give him work that steadies his hand, not money that shakes it. I read it twice, then once out loud to the empty kitchen because some sentences need air to take root. The brass key lay beside the mug, catching the lamplight. I didn't feel loss. I felt the sense you get when the tide changes and the wind, for once, points where you're headed. In the morning, I called Jack. He listened without interrupting, then said, "We can honor Elliot now without moving you an inch. Life estate stays. We sign a memorandum with the land trust, no rush, no drama, so the future has a file folder when it needs one. Paper that bends time without breaking today." That sounded like the kind of magic I believe in. Nate came over at dusk, hands empty, eyes honest. "Chloe's furious," he said. She called her dad. "He says you can't do this." "I already did," I said, sliding Elliot's letter across the table. "And your father did too." I watched his face as he read. When he looked up, something had shifted. He wasn't smaller or bigger, he was truer. "So the cabin was never a prize," he said softly. "It's a promise." "It always was," I said. "And promises come with jobs." He swallowed. "What do you need me to do?" The chair inside me, the one I keep for when people are ready to sit and listen, felt steady under us both. 90 days, I said, of boring, a budget you actually follow, meetings you actually attend, a counselor who will look you in the eye and say the word gambling without flinching. If you want a key to any future I manage, you put in sweat where cash used to go. There's a home repair fund I'm setting up with the land trust, roof patches, ramp builds, heater fixes for folks who can't afford a contractor. You can learn what a caulk gun feels like at 8 a.m. in February. He let out the smallest laugh, which came out of him like a cough and something cleaner. "I can do February," he said. "For Chloe." I went on, and I said her name without vinegar. There's a way back that doesn't go through my pocket. 200 hours at the women's shelter, laundry, intake, dishes, whatever they need, and a letter, not to me, to herself, naming the ways pressure disguised itself as care. If she wants to repair, she learns a language without bonuses. Nate nodded. I'll tell her. She won't like it. She doesn't have to like it, I said. She has to choose it. I poured us tea and slid his mug closer. We're trading quick for real. That week held more paperwork than a holiday season at the post office. Jack drafted the memorandum with the land trust. I keep the life estate. The cabin moves into trust stewardship when I'm done using it. No loans, no flips, no fevered sales. Maya updated the bank files with the memo so no one could pretend not to see. Officer Park dropped by while I signed, just to say hello and to look me in the eyes the way good officers do when they want a citizen to know she isn't alone. Ruth brought pound cake and sat on the back steps with me while we watched the ADU porch stay dark. You know what I love? She said, slicing the cake with a plastic knife like she was cutting construction paper. That you're not punishing anybody. You're putting the furniture back where it goes. Chloe did come by, once, with a face that said she hadn't slept, and a voice that traded speed for precision. 200 hours, she repeated, as if testing whether the number would bruise her tongue. And the letter, not to you. She looked past me into the kitchen, at the mirror where my note hung. No daylight, no signature, she said, reading it like a foreign proverb. Fine, I'll try your language. It isn't mine, I said. It's the house's. She almost smiled. You're serious about the repair fund? I am. I know how to run volunteers, she said. I'm good at schedules. Then, softer, like she'd found something breakable on the floor and decided to hand it back, I'm also good at pressure. I want to see who I am without it. You'll find out on a Tuesday when nobody's watching, I said. That's where real lives live. We stood in the doorway a long moment, two women who had both learned to sell different kinds of weather. She left, without trying to hug me. That felt right. By month's end, Nate's hands had new half-moons in the skin, not from keys, but from a hammer he hadn't held since shop class. He started leaving receipts in a coffee tin with a label he made himself, earned. Chloe texted me photos, not of contracts but of shelves she'd stocked at the shelter, a toddler's shoes lined up in pairs. No emojis, just the work. Jack called to say the memorandum was recorded. Clean as rain, he said. You've turned a fight into a file. Elliot would approve. That evening I swept the kitchen like I always do when a day ends honestly. The brass lighthouse key hung on its hook by the back door, the truck fob beside it. The sun, on its way downriver, found the key at the exact right angle, so a thin bar of light crossed the hallway mirror and touched the words I'd written in the bad hours. For a second, the paper looked like a window. People think boundaries are walls. Maybe sometimes they are. Tonight they felt like locks that keep a house. They keep the wrong storms from coming in and the right people from blowing away. I set a second key on the hook, a spare for Nate. Not to the cabin, not yet, but to the shed with the tools and the repair fund checklists. He picked it up later with the same care he used to reserve for model cars and baseball cards, held it to the light, and nodded like a man saying, Grace. We didn't hug. We didn't make speeches. We washed the mugs, dried them, put them back where they go. The kind of ending that doesn't end anything. It turns the story into a room you can live in. When I went to bed, the house knew its edges, and so did I. The cabin would keep warming people long after I was done needing stairs. My son had a job his hands could believe in. My daughter-in-law had hours that would teach her a new clock. And I had a sentence on a mirror that would outlast my moods. If it isn't in the light, it isn't mine to sign. Boundaries aren't punishment, they're protection. Or, as Evelyn taped to her mirror, no daylight, no signature. When love finally grows a backbone, it stops being a puddle and becomes a shoreline. That's the lesson here. You can be kind and still keep the keys. What does that look like in real life? Start small and visible. Write your boundary in one clear sentence and put it where you'll see it daily. Use the 3C pause. Calm, collect, confirm before you agree to anything urgent. Keep a simple family incident log Date, time, who said what. Boring paper saves messy hearts. Ask the 7 questions before you sign. Who's asking? What authority? What's the rush? Where are the witnesses? If it can't stand in daylight, it can wait. And if you've made mistakes, debt, pressure, people-pleasing, there's still a door back. Repair is made of Tuesdays, not speeches. Let the story's anchor remind you, the brass lighthouse key didn't slam doors, it kept the house a house. Your version might be a sticky note on your phone, a trusted friend on speed dial, or insisting on in-person verification at the bank. Quiet, repeatable moves. No drama, just direction. This is not legal advice. If this spoke to you, drop one sentence you'll tape to your own mirror on a bad day. Then download the 1-page checklist, 3C, 7 questions, family incident log, in the description, and subscribe if you want more calm, backbone-filled stories. Share this with someone who needs a gentle lock on their life. May you sleep tonight on boundaries you chose, and wake to a house that still feels like yours.